What's going on, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Thank you for stopping by. I know it's been a couple weeks since I posted. I was very tied up over the last few weeks, but I'm settled in and I'm ready to post consistently again, which is a great thing because this year has been insanely packed with amazing JRPGs. And in today's video, I'll be talking about two of the biggest ones to come out this year: Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Persona 3 Reload. I'm bundling these together into this video simply because I'm a little late posting thoughts and impressions on them, and I've spent a ton of time with both of these games. Today, I'll be giving you my thoughts and overall impressions on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Persona 3 Reload. So without waiting any longer, I'm going to start off with Persona 3 Reload because I've finished this one and spent a ton, just an insane amount of time trying to experience everything this game has to offer. And without a doubt, this is phenomenal remake and honestly one of the best Persona games out there, hands down. In my Persona ranking video, I put Royal at the top spot, and I feel like Reload is right there neck and neck with it. This game feels brand new in a lot of ways. Sure, there are some things that are specific to the Persona series that feel like a step back, but only hardcore Persona fans will really notice these. This is easily one of the best JRPGs out there, and I enjoyed every single minute of it. And it honestly reshaped my opinion on Persona 3 and moved it up towards the top of my list in terms of favorite games in the series. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to go through a few things I loved and then touch on the things that could have been improved. First and foremost, the presentation is absolutely amazing. The art style, the stylistic upgrades, and the voice acting are all top notch. I really enjoyed my time with it, and not for 1 second did I feel like this was a half-hearted attempt at bringing in money from fans of the series. This felt like a love letter to the Persona 3 we all know and love. From the moment I turned it on and saw the opening cinematic, heard the music, I just knew I'd thoroughly enjoy this game. It really is just an amazing experience from start to finish. Next up, I have to give it to the gameplay enhancements. The combat and exploration is much more akin to Persona 5 and therefore feels much more modern and significantly improved. I felt Persona Fusion was really well done, the enhanced social links, the new theurgy system, and the addition of Shift or Baton Pass in Persona 5 make this an overall great experience from a combat perspective. Add that extra layer of strategy once things ramp up and become more challenging. Even if things do take forever to really ramp up, the pacing is something I'll speak more on later, but I digress. I always praise Persona games for their stylistic UI, and Persona 3 Reload really took things up a notch with this one. I love the colors and transitions, and I feel like everything is super intuitive. I liked Persona 5's UI and design, but thought it was a bit over the top at times, but Persona 3 Reload hits what I'm looking for almost perfectly. It really is incredible. I also like the addition of an objective bar and mini-map. It makes those long Tartarus runs a breeze to get through. Now to get into the things that I was not a huge fan of, Persona 3 is an older game, and it was the one that introduced the modern Persona formula that we all know and are familiar with today. With that came some growing pains, obviously, that were heavily improved in Persona 4 and Persona 5. First up, while I do expect Persona games to start off slow, they all kind of do. Persona 3 starts off very slow in my opinion. There's 20 or so hours where you get into this routine where if you aren't familiar with Persona 3, you may think this is all there is to the game. The game spends a bit too long onboarding you, and fans of the series in particular are going to feel a bit bored doing the same thing over and over for several hours, as there aren't a ton of activities to explore, especially in the early stages of the game. You're going to get in this routine of sorts where you're going to Tartarus, grinding floors, coming out, building social links. The social links aren't all unlocked from the beginning, so you're tied to a few of them to start out, and a couple of side activities. And it kind of gets in this like rotation of just feeling like you're doing the same thing over and over again, and it does this for far too long in my opinion. This is likely due to the fact that the story and pacing remain the same in the remake, and all of these mechanics were very new at the time of its release, but with other games in the series heavily improving on the life sim aspects, it feels a bit repetitive to start out for sure. The other thing I want to point out is that Persona 3 Reload's core gameplay loop of grinding Tartarus to ultimately pass time until story progresses lacks the depth of the other games in the series. Something I really liked about 5 was how the palaces that you go through not only tied nicely into the main story, but they each have a very distinct theme and visual aesthetic, almost to the point of each one being its own game experience that's vastly different from the previous one. It's incredibly well done, and unfortunately you don't really get that in Persona 3 Reload. Not that I didn't like the gameplay loop here, I just felt like variation was needed. Reload did add some upgrades to Tartarus, making each section distinct and original, adding some variety to the floors, and therefore making things more aesthetically pleasing. But overall, it just doesn't hit the same highs as 4 and 5 in that regard. Negatives aside, Persona 3 Reload's story is far and away one of my favorite JRPG stories of all time. I love the characters, I love the dark and grim direction things take, and I really love the mysteries that unfold as the story progresses. Persona 3 does some really incredible things with its storytelling and world building, and I had an incredibly fun time with it. If you enjoy story and JRPGs like I do, then this is an absolute must play, and I promise you'll enjoy it. All right, moving on to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. What can I say? Final Fantasy VII Remake is up there with my favorite Final Fantasy games ever, and Rebirth really does top it in almost every conceivable way. I was a bit disappointed with 16 and was really excited to play Rebirth and continue what 7 gave us in terms of story, and man, am I loving every minute of this game. I haven't finished it yet, but I have put a ton of time into it, and I am finding that I'm easily getting distracted. These open zones in this game are just so easy to get lost in. There's so much to do and explore, and if you're like me and you like the whole go here and do this thing to unlock this, then you'll love 100%ing each of these areas. It's very satisfying. The combat is very similar to Remake, which is great because this is likely my favorite combat system in Final Fantasy. It borders the turn-based and action-style combat really well and leaves a lot of room for strategy and changing up your approach for the more challenging fights. There's been a few times where I came out of a fight with a sliver of health left, and making 1 or 2 final decisions at the end made all the difference. And in that right there makes the combat encounters just so satisfying. Moving on to the story. Now, the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake was incredible, but such a small portion of the overall game that it was derived from. Rebirth does definitely open things up a bit. The remakes, however, do take things in their own direction at times, and I don't mind that at all personally, but I know there's fans out there of the original game that really don't enjoy that. I won't really go into story details here because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but I will say I'm enjoying the story in Rebirth quite a bit more than Remake. There's a lot to love here, and I do think fans of 7 and new fans alike will enjoy it a ton. Now, I can't talk about this game without mentioning the presentation and the graphical fidelity. I mean, this may be one of the best looking games I've ever played. The graphics are absolutely incredible. I have been finding that the graphics mode is much better than the performance mode. I typically go for performance mode in games, but the performance mode in Rebirth just isn't all that great. It looks muddy, there's a ton of pop in, and it just takes away from the overall experience. If you don't mind 30 frames per second, then the graphics mode is the way to go. I think in Rebirth, it is a little bit hard to get used to at first, but once you get rolling, it is much better. Overall, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth may be my game of the year so far, and I think it will be hard to top it. This is an incredible game with a ton to love. This is a JRPG that can't be missed, in my opinion, and will go down as one of my all-time favorites. 2024 has absolutely been insane when it comes to JRPG releases. Persona 3 Reload managed to exceed my expectations in a ton of different ways and make for one of the best Persona experiences, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is everything I could have hoped for and more, and it's probably sitting at the top of my Game of the Year list right now. I still have a ton of games to play. I have Unicorn Overlord and Dragon's Dogma 2 on my shelf calling my name next week, so be on the lookout for videos of those games. I hope you're enjoying your time with these. If you're playing them, let me know what you think in the comments below. I also have a Discord for us, so if you want to chat about it or all the crazy releases coming this year, drop by and say hello. I'll have a link in the description below. And until next time, I'm out.